You realize I'm 82. If we don't do this fairly soon, I may not be here to do it.
So let's go right back to the beginning.
Yep.
You told me that you were born in Fitchburg.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about coming to Ashby?
Well, you know, I was 4 years old when I come there. I can remember living in Fitchburg on Warren Street, but not a lot. I can remember taking walks down to Cogsall Park with my grandmother. My grandmother lived with us because her husband died before my father got married. So she was always part of the family. And she moved, when they came from there up here, she moved up here with us. She worked in the store for my father here as a cashier, along with my mother. They'd take turns doing that. So that was basically a family affair.
And you came here in what year?
1943.
1943. And you were still a young one at that point.
4 years old. My sister was 1 year old.
Yeah. Had your father, what was his interest in coming to Ashby?
Well, he bought the store. He liked that type of work. He was working for a bread company before that. He didn't serve in the war because he worked in a paper mill. He got his arm caught in a machine or something, and he had a damaged arm. So he was rejected for service in World War II. But he worked in a paper mill, and then he worked in, after that, he worked for a bread company. They made bread and delivered it and that. And then he had a chance to buy the store, so he bought the store. And he liked store work. He liked working with the public.
So he started with the store right when he came to town. And when you came to town, did you have brothers or sisters at that point? Or?
Me?
Yeah.
I had a sister, 3 years younger than I was.
And it was your parents and your grandmother. That was
Yes.
the family.
That was the family.
Okay.
And we all worked at the store.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well,
Working at the store?
my grandmother she was at the checkout counter, and she'd rotate with my mother. My father was at the meat counter cutting up the meat, and he hired people locally to do some work in the store. And as kids, we had certain jobs we had to do, like clean up the stock room a little bit and stock certain shelves. No, it wasn't dramatic, but he made sure we were ready to learn how to work for a living. And I still do it today.
And do you mind me asking how old you are today?
82. I'll be 83 in the fall.
And still at it?
Yes, well, part-time. I don't do it in the winter now.
Let's talk a little bit. So it sounds like as a kid, you had some responsibility working in the store. Tell me what else it was like to be a kid in Ashby at
Well,
that time.
you know, all we had then was baseball and basketball for sports, but we did a lot of fishing. You know, dealing with the land was part of your life then. You know, there was a lot of hunters in town, which you couldn't hunt when you were young at my age, but we could pedal our bikes and go fishing. And we used to do that on a regular basis.
Did you have any favorite fishing spots?
Yeah, well, when we were real young, my sister and I would pedal our bikes down to Camp Middlesex and sit on the dam there and fish for perch or whatever would bite. Or we'd fish downstream. There was a big pool, and we'd go down there and fish for whatever would bite. Of course, you weren't very deadly on some of that stuff. And all we would, a kid I went to school with, Pete LaRoe, he recently passed away. We'd pedal our bikes up to Lower Wrights Pond and fish at the Rod and Gun Club there. The old timers would come down and ask us not to catch all the fish. We said, no, we won't, sir. You know, of course, we're lying them. If we could have, we would have. But we weren't smart enough to catch them. We were just starting out. But they were good about it, you know. But that clubhouse, that was built in, I think, '39. That club originally come out of West Fitchburg.
The Broading guy?
Yeah, up on Richardson Road.
Okay.
And they were, and then they built the building, and they bought the pond and that stuff.
So it sounds like you had great opportunities to get out and
Oh, yes.
walk around.
Yeah. And one day I was in school and I got older, I played on the baseball team. I never played on basketball, but I played on the baseball team. Then, in the summer, they have police league baseball.
We'll talk about that a little bit more. So the local police officers were involved in
Well, I don't know about that, but it was called the police league.
a police.
And I'm sure they're the ones that ran it behind the scenes. But we played Ashburnham and some of the local towns. That was just to keep you out of mischief in the summer when you weren't in school. When you were in school, you played for the school team. But we only had 9 baseball players. So when we had a period we didn't have a class, the coach would make us sit in the back of his class to make sure we didn't get into trouble because he only had 9 players. He couldn't afford to lose one.
I understand that sports were very important to kids in Ashby growing up.
Well, it was, you know. We grew up hunting and fishing. When you got old enough to hunt, you hunt. You know, we used to be at school. Our guns were in the cars in the back seat with a blanket over them. We never shot the teachers or ourselves or our friends. You know, you hear about all that today. We all had guns. We grew up with them. But you went hunting. We'd skip school to go hunting. And then at noontime we'd come down and show the kids that didn't skip school if we got anything. Of course, we weren't very good at that either. We're just starting out. And the teachers would come out and talk to us to see if we got anything.
Tell me a little bit more about what it was like to go to school, because I understand, where did you go to your elementary school years?
Where the town office is now.
Up to
It started on the first floor on this side and went down and then up and back. So I spent all 12 years in this school.
Do you have some memories of favorite subjects, or what did you really enjoy about school?
Leaving.
Leaving.
I tell you, I was an honor student until my mother died when I was 12 years old. Then I hit the don't give a shit list. You know, it broke me. I never recovered for that for a long time.
Sounds like that was a really tough time for you.
Yeah, well, it took her a year to pass away, for she had cancer. You know, and on a young child, my sister don't remember it as much as I do, but I was old enough. I was 12 years old at the time. You know, probably 11 when it started, but that took the starch out of me for my classwork. You know, but like I said, they get rid of me. They graduated me to get rid of me.
So you got your high school diploma.
Oh yes, yeah.
And at that time, what were you thinking that you were going to do? Did you have?
I had no idea. I know I didn't like store work. I did store work all my life. I liked working outside. You know, and over the years, I've done a lot of outside work. I've worked on the farms. I worked tree work. I worked in a sawmill. I worked in an apple orchard. The list goes on.
Before we get too much into what you did for work as an adult, I wanted to just follow up on a couple of things from when you were a kid.
Yep.
Because it was a small town, and you must have known most of the people who lived here.
Well, we knew a lot of them because my father had the store. And what it is, long before, when I was young, he would take me, the groceries were delivered then, like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday morning. They were delivered, you'd call in the order, and we'd take it right to your house. And my father would take me with him, and I wasn't strong enough at that stage when I first started to carry in anything heavy, but I would carry in a gallon of bleach or a can of this or something, and then the groceries are in wooden boxes, like cardboard, like for apple boxes or soda boxes. And then I would take them back out. So, and any little thing my father wanted, to go back and forth for that. But I was with him and we were doing it. And then when I got older and I could drive, then I delivered the groceries myself.
When we spoke briefly yesterday, Bob, you were talking about the farms in town.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit more about?
Well, Ashby was basically a farm town. You had some larger farms, but you had a lot of small farms. There was family farms, where it was either the cows or chickens. The chickens were, your coop in Fitchburg would give you the chickens to raise, and then they'd take them back and pay you. So a lot of the stuff, a lot of that was in town. Chicken barns here and there and everything. You had apple orchards, quite a few apple orchards. And then you had the larger farms, like the Stock Farm and Crocker's farm up on top of the hill. But Crocker, that was they had money behind that because they were part of the paper mill Crockers. So they had their fingers in the money pot, they could get what they wanted. That's where they had a lot of equipment. But he would do, Kenny Crocker would do work for the town with his bulldozers and that stuff when we had a bad storm. Back in those days, you had bad storms. You had snow that was several feet deep. And it took major equipment to move it sometime.
And how did that happen? Was there a DPW that would come along and take care of the roads, or how did
Well,
that
the DPW would take care of the state road. The town had to take care of the town roads. But in those days, there were small dump trucks. And what it is, you had a handle in the truck to raise the plow. It was like running a jack. So the town would hire these young men, myself included, at $1 an hour to ride in the dump truck, which was unheated, and run the plow. When the driver wanted the plow raised, you raised it. But we'd go up the town shed to see when there was a bad storm, to see if there was any work available. And it was up to them to say yes or no, and then you'd hang around for a while and see, and then you'd go home if you didn't get to ride in one of the trucks. But the trucks weren't big trucks like today. They were smaller trucks.
But it sounded like you did have a chance to get out and have a good time too. You fished.
Oh yeah, well, hunting and fishing, well, I wasn't hunting. I didn't hunt until I was old enough to hunt, which was 15 or 16 years old. But I shot my first deer when I was 16 years old. But when I was 16, I worked up in the mills in Greenville all one summer and into fall, even after school started. I was working 11 to 7 up in Greenville and then going to school, but that didn't work out. It was either give up school or give up the mill. So I gave up the mill.
And then what kind of work did you do at the mill?
I took the cloth off the machines and brought it down to be cleaned and checked over. So, and that wasn't a big paying job, but it was 11 to 7 and it was a job. My father would drive me up there, and then he'd pick me up in the morning.
So that was a big commitment of time on his end too.
Well, when you got kids, I had a job, and he worked with me on it, because I didn't have, otherwise. I had a car, but it wasn't registered, but I would have drove it up there anyways. 11 to 7, to hell with them. They got to catch me.
Were there police on duty from 11 to 7?
I don't know. Yeah. I used to go up and there was a coffee shop just up the street from the mill. This is the mill that's right on Main Street in Greenville, by the dam where the pond dumps out. There was a mill on the right. That was a big mill at the time. And there was a coffee shop just up the street, and I used to go there where they played the jukebox, and Ma Newell ran it. So you weren't drinking beer there, I can tell you that. She was a tough old bird, but she had rooms upstairs as well.
So all in all, when you think about your time as a kid in Ashby, what do you think the best part was of growing up in Ashby?
Well, I think just growing up in a suburban town, you know, was interesting. You know, learning the wildlife and the fish life was interesting. You know, and you had baseball and whatever else you got involved in. There was nothing sinister in those days. There were no drugs around or that. Once in a while, if you're lucky, you could sneak a beer, but that was a rare thing when you're young.
And it sounds like you had the freedom to roam a bit and...
Oh, yes. Yeah. I pedaled my bike down to one of the brooks in the morning and fish the brook, and I might fish it to who knows where, just to learn where the brook went. That's why I know all the woods and streams in Ashby, is because I spent time in them.
Was the area that's the state forest, now the Willard Brook area, was that a park then, or was that just...
No, that was Willard Brook then.
It was.
We took swimming lessons down there. And the water's cold. But, you know, we took swimming lessons there. That was Willard Brook then. Pretty much as it is now, except, you know, it's probably we're far more advanced now than it ever was then. But they still had a nice setup down there. But we used to swim over at the Ashby Reservoir, at the dam. That was open to the public. We could pedal our bikes over there and go swimming.
And that was before the Fitchburg...
No, Fitchburg owned it. They just didn't restrict the use of it. And that had big crowds in the summer of the local residents and that stuff. I had a boat over there for quite a while when I was in my early teens. My father had got me like a 12-foot boat, and I used to paddle that around up there. We had it over, when you go over the dam, not the dam, when you go over the bridge, the first house on the left, we were friends with those people, so I left the boat there. We'd go get it, and then we'd roll the boat around the pond to see who was doing what. Peter Forsman grew up in town, down on Allen Road.
Did you, as you were growing up, did you go out of town very often to...
Well, only when your parents took you, you know, they'd take you down to Whalum or up to Hampton Beach once a year maybe. Maybe down to Boston for the shows, you know, where they have the animals in there, or skating or whatever. But, you know, that'd be a once a year thing. So you might go somewhere once or twice a year or 3 times a year with your family on out of town affairs. So, you know, around town. My father would take me, we had a town team for baseball of adults. And on Sunday, he would take me up to the ballpark, and we'd sit in the bleachers there and watch the town team play. These were men playing men. They weren't boys playing boys. But that was interesting. But, you know, I was quite young then. And then there was the basketball up at the Grange Hall.
And I understand that the people in town were very supportive of the basketball.
Oh, yes.
That these were
Well, TVs were limited. You know, my neighbor, they had a TV. They used to let my sister and I come over because her the Mossman lived there, and the son was probably my sister's age or closer. He's younger than I was, and they let us go over and watch TV like Howdy Doody and a couple of those shows. But you know, that was only for like an hour at night sometime. You know, and it was a year or 2 or 3 before my father we got a TV.
So it sounded like there were plenty of activities to keep you busy and a lot going on. What would you say were some of the harder parts of growing up in Ashby? Is there anything that...
Well, I don't know what you would call a harder part. You know, my grandmother would take my sister and I down to Fitchburg to see a movie once in a while and that, but you know, we really thought we were living quite well. Of course, you don't know any better, you know.
And so as you were ending your school years, were you thinking about leaving Ashby, or did you...
No, I never thought about leaving Ashby. My sister couldn't wait to leave. When she got out of school, and she got married, she lived in Fitchburg, and then as soon as she could do it, they live in Florida, and they've lived in Florida for a long time now. But you're not getting me out of Ashby. I like it here.
If you were talking to somebody who was thinking about moving to Ashby today, what would you tell them were the better parts of living in a small town like Ashby?
Well, a small town, you've got, it all depends what you're looking for. You know, you've got space, and you can go walking without getting mugged. You can do this without this and that. You know, all I can say, you know, it's good living. Maybe I don't know any better, but, you know, I wouldn't want to live in the cities because I'm used to having where a stretch of the legs you can go for a walk through the woods or whatever. There's large areas of land that the public has access to now. They may not realize how much land they get access to, but it's set aside for public use.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit, Bob, because I know as an Ashby resident, I'm sorry to say that after being in town for many years now, besides the state forest, I haven't really been exploring. Tell us about some of the places in town.
Watadic Mountain, Blood Hill, Fitchburg Rod and Gun Club, that's a public pond, and the public has access to that pond, even though the Rod and Gun Club's on it, because any pond over 10 acres, any natural pond over 10 acres that isn't made by a dam is a public pond. So the minute you even if it's posted, you put your foot in the water, you're on public property. They don't own the pond. We've had that discussion up at Wright's Pond more than once. And I had to explain to some of the members, you don't own the pond. And don't ever think you do own it, because it's a public pond. And that's a fact. And Lower Wright's Pond is the same thing. That's a public pond. There's a right-of-way that goes into it that's in question. But that's where it stands right now.
So in your experience, because you grew up hunting and fishing and getting out and exploring, you continue to be a hunter today?
No.
No?
I outgrew it. What it is, I'm too old to drag a deer out. The last deer I shot, I almost died dragging it to the road. I'd drag the deer so far, and then I'd lay down, put my head on his carcass, use it for a pillow, and I'd be breathing, trying to get my breath back. And I figured, well, if I don't make it, they'll find us together. And the bird hunting, I like bird hunting, pheasant, partridge, and woodcock. I like that more than anything. But as the farms started disappearing, there was less and less wild birds, wild partridge, wild pheasants. And the woodcock are migratory. They're like ducks. They come up and go back down south and that. So as the wild birds started to disappear, they still stocked pheasants. It just wasn't the same. So I gave it up back in the late 80s, shooting them.
You stuck with fishing after that?
Oh yeah, I still fish. I ice fish today. I don't fish the brooks much because there's so many of those little bugs that bite you around there. But there was a lot of wild trout around in those days too. A lot of these streams that were hard to get to and had some nice wild trout in it. I knew where they were. Our family ate trout till they were sick of them. My family, after I was married at the house there, they ate pheasant and partridge since they were sick of them. But those days are gone.
Well, if you're game, I'd like to continue to talk a little bit about how you came to do the work you're doing. Because
So I started my own business in 1968.
Were you a one-man show, or were you...
Well, it started off that way, and it got bigger and bigger. At one point, I got up to 15 people. And I got in with some of the better contractors, like the Honkala Construction here. They were very helpful in getting me going, and then I got hooked up with some other ones. And they liked what I did and the fact that I did it what I said I was going to do, and I did it when I said I was going to do it.
Did you ever have to advertise, or the work just pretty much?
No, I never advertised because I usually get enough by word of mouth on a lot of that stuff. And I never put signs out because I had enough work. I just had more guys working at one time or another because I needed them. I didn't want to get any bigger than I had to, but I want to, the name of the game is profit. You know, you can do a tremendous amount of work, but if you ain't making a profit, why do it? You know, as time went by, I got smaller and smaller, you know, because I didn't want the thing, but I always, until we're almost a one-man thing now for, oh Christ, a long time. But I just do it part-time. I do it in good weather, depending on the weather and what I get for business. Sometimes I get some pretty good-sized jobs. Other times I just odds and ends, repair work. But I get a lot of people that'll wait for me because they know they're going to get at least what they're going to get what they pay for. And if there's a problem, you go back right away. This ain't a jerk job. I'll be there, I'll be there, I'll be there. You don't show up. The trick is they call you. If you can, you get down the same day. But that ain't always possible, but you try to make it as possible as find out what it is. Sometimes it doesn't concern you, and other times it does, but they don't know that. You have to explain whatever.
Well, now that you have a little bit more free time on your hands, do you do any traveling or,
No.
or leave during the winter months? You stay close to home?
I like Ashby. We go, my wife and I go ice fishing periodically. We got some places we go. I can't eat fish chowder now, so I don't keep them. But I get out and catch 50 or 75 perch in an afternoon. But they all go back, you know, perch, calicos, pickerel, bass. I've thrown back bass that were that long because I didn't feel like carrying them home.
So there's plenty of fun to be had in the Ashby area.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And it seems like growing up in town, you had connections to other people, friends that you made in school.
Oh, yeah. Well, we were the biggest class that went into that school at the time, and we were like 20. We were like 20 people, and that was the biggest. Before, some of them they only had 6 or 8. You know, it was a small town, and they were getting a little bigger. Now we're up to 20. You know, most of them are gone. We still got a few.
Do you attend the annual alumni
No,
get-togethers?
not very seldom.
Yeah.
You know, very seldom. I don't go up to Maya when they hold those things. I went to one 50th, and our class got together down the old mill and that stuff. And I went to school with Edson Wears. He grew up at the end of Wears Road there. And he was as wild as the rest of us. I mean, we were getting in a lot of mischief. And he said, telling me, he's saying prayers for me. I said, you're saying prayers for me? I said, pray for yourself. You've been in more trouble than I get in. No, what the hell are you praying for me for?
So did you ever have a time you got into some serious trouble, or were you?
No, none of it was serious trouble. The cops did catch you drinking a beer or something.
Yeah.
One time they got 3 of us or 4 of us down to Fitchburg. We were drinking a beer parked on some side place, and we see him coming, so we put the beer under the seat in the back seat. Well, we forgot to put the cap on it. So the cop opens the door. He says, I smell beer, you drinking? Oh, no, sir. Right, if he looked at his shoes, he'd find out he was standing in it. Cops took us home. They give us that Fitchburg, to Ashby. Ray Hayward was chief at the time. He had a Lincoln or something like that. So they takes me to the house. A couple of the guys are still in the back of his car. They takes me to the house, and they come in and talking to my father. I looks out the window. They had electric windows there. They were running electric windows up and down, right? Chief went out to leave. The battery was dead.
Oh.
It wasn't me. I had to get somebody to come up and jump his battery.
Yeah.
But that's the type of a lot of this mischief wasn't really, well, it's criminal activities to the point you weren't supposed to have a beer, but I mean, some of this stuff, it wasn't serious stuff, where you're hurting somebody or doing something where there's pain involved or anything else. You do what most kids do, you get away with what you try to get away with.
Right.
Getting away with it's another act of God.
Yeah, for sure. So at this point, having lived in town as long as you have, what are you thinking about Ashby's future and the direction of things?
Well, the direction is we're not a farm town anymore. We're just a suburb of Worcester and Boston. That's about what it amounts to, and they're building all the time. The farms got built on. A lot of the farms was farmland. My thoughts on this is, don't build on the good farmland first. Build on the crap land first, and you save the good farmland because you're going to have to need it for food someday. But that ain't the way it seems to work. The best land goes first.
Do you follow the politics in Ashby pretty closely? Or?
Well, within reason. My father told me one thing when he knew before I even went into the business, I was selling storm windows and doors and doing small jobs and that stuff besides being in the union, because the union work was hit and miss sometimes. And that he says, if you're in business, don't go into politics. It's bad for business. And I never forgot that. When there were subjects that came up that were sensitive to me, I would get my 2 cents worth in, but I never ran for office. And a number of people were trying to get me to do that. I said no. And I still say no today, but if something comes up I really don't like, you'll know it.
Do you go to the town meetings?
Some, and they know it. I was told one time, they knew that I didn't agree with them, so they didn't want me to talk. So the one running the meeting, trying to ignore me, so I got up and I said, I'm not sitting down till I talk. And I'm talking, and she tried cutting me off. I said, look, we're not North Korea now. I said, I'm not done talking, and I'm not sitting down until I'm done talking. Now, how do we do this? So I finished talking, and I sat down like I promised her. But I've taken on time, there's certain subjects came up. I sent a letter to every voter in town stating my opinions and why they were my opinions. 3 days before they voted. Just so this was fresh in their minds as well.
So you were never afraid to express your...
Oh no! No, go for the throat. The sooner they quit breathing, the sooner you'll win. No. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but I mean, a lot of this was to do with, like when Reggio was going to build on that side of the common. And there was a couple other plans that were vague, but he put his plans on the thing, and I said, that's going to be a major asset to the common. It's going to be a major asset to Ashby, because that was a nice restaurant. When I was young, it was a restaurant. Dick Delaney owned it. Then the Greens bought it, and they used it for living in. And the boy, he was our music teacher. I'm trying to think what his...
Clark?
Huh?
Clark?
Yeah, Clark Green, he was our music teacher. And we taught him how to sing Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. So they made us take music, like 3 or 4 of us. We didn't have a choice. You're taking it. Yep. Every time he started a song, he would sing Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier to him, right? He'd driving him nuts. So then, yeah, all right, you've had your fun, let's go again. We'd sing it again, and again, and again. That lasted about a month, then they threw us out of music.
Did you ever have any affiliation with any of the churches in town, or?
No. We were Catholics. Pete LaRoe, his mother and father and my mother and father, At the time, I think we were the only Catholics in town. We come up here in the 40s, but we went to church in Townsend. You know. But I haven't been active. My wife's active in the Congo church. She hasn't been going over there lately because of COVID. She's afraid of groups now. But she still supports the church fully, but I don't. No. God and I had a bad set to when I lost my mother, because I said prayers every night for a year or more for her to come home, you know, and it didn't happen. I goes, well, the hell with them.
Sounds like it was a really tough time in your life.
Well, that was.
So let me just ask, this is my last question, but then if you have anything else you want to say, I want to make sure you have time. When you look forward, what are your concerns about Ashby going down the road?
Well, my biggest concern is they operate the town financially reasonable enough so Joe Sixpack can live here, and not just the filthy rich. You know, that's the key to small towns' survival, is the smaller person that has a real reason to want the town to be what a town is. But I'm sure we survived through everything. You know, there's going to be change. Change is a fact of life. And there's going to be changes here as the town grows. But we've set aside a lot of land that won't be developed, which is an asset to the town. Not only that, Blood Hill and the Crocker Farm is now public land up there. And there's other areas of public land. So Rod and Gun's got 150 acres of public land up there. Well, almost. We got 12 acres for around the clubhouse and that's members only. But the rest of the land is open to the public now. Before we could do what we wanted with it, we left it open to the public. But the state and us got together for a conservation easement.
Well, I really appreciate your taking the time, and that was the extent of the questions I have. But like I said, I want to give you a chance to weigh in or talk about anything that you like. Is there anything else that you think we could talk about?
Well, there's not much to talk about. I like living in Ashby, and they weren't getting me out of Ashby, you know. And I already got my retirement home just down the street. So when I don't live here, then I found a place to live. Well, I don't know if I'll live. I'll probably be dead because it's down at Glenwood.
Down at Glenwood
Glenwood
Cemetery.
Acres. I tell people, we got a retirement home at Glenwood Acres. They said, I never heard of that. Well, they're thinking we're living there. That ain't quite the case.
It is a lovely spot,
Oh,
for sure.
well, I got in the new section just as when they put it up for sale. And I'm overlooking South Road. So I tell them, at least I got a lot with a view.
That's great. That's great. Well, it's been a privilege to listen to your story, and I've certainly met you over the years on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
You're part of the reason that I'm very thankful I made my way to Ashby,
Yeah.
because I discovered it's a very special place to live, and you certainly have done a great job today sharing what your experience has been.
Well, I'm concerned about a lot of things that happen in Ashby. And behind the scenes on a lot of stuff nobody knows, and they never will know. Myself and a few others have stepped in and did what had to be done to keep things running. You know, like rebuilding the bandstand, that was a pro bono, you know. But the roof got to the point it couldn't be repaired. I couldn't walk on it, the boards had rotted.
Oh, yeah.
So Richie Forsman does carpentry, and I told him, Richie, if we don't do something here, we ain't gonna have a bandstand, and if it falls down, they'll never rebuild it in our lifetime. So we put together a committee and we rebuilt it. And Freddie was on the common committee there, so we got the okay from him. And once we started on the bandstand, we had more people than we could use. The Sentinel even was up here with a guy, but I told him, don't bother me, you want to be helpful, pick up the rubbish, leave me alone. I'm trying to get the thing built on the weekends. But we did it, put a new roof on it, and it ain't leaked since, and we still got it. There was a bunch of pro bono here on the existing building when, she lives down on the Conner Allen Road. She ran
The library before?
yeah, can't lie. But when she was here, a lot of this was pro bono because they didn't have any money. And I told her that ain't a problem. I said, the last one, there was a pipe let go before they built this, venting on the back corner here. And I had to go up and fix it and then fix the slate around it and all that stuff. And she didn't ask, she said, I ain't got any money. I said, that don't matter, I'm doing it anyways. And but once they stuck it up her tutu, now there is no pro bono. They pay or else. Hire somebody that wants to put up with your bullshit. What they did to her, they shouldn't have done to her. She was a very faithful employee for a long, long time under difficult conditions sometimes. And I ain't the only one that feels that way. A lot of the people in town, it left a bad taste in their mouth.
Well, as somebody who enjoys certainly band concerts and the library and all the other amenities in town, I do appreciate all the work you have done.
Well, it's not just me. There's a group behind the scenes people don't know about. They can pick up the phone and call me, or I can pick up the phone and call them and say, look, let's look into this, because there's no money to do it. And the same goes for some of these people, the elderly, that are in a bad spot for whatever reason. But that stuff we never discuss openly using names. We just say, well, so we got together with what we had to do.
It sounds like there's a strong tradition in Ashby of helping people out.
Oh, there is. It ain't just me. I'm just the tip of the iceberg on some of this stuff. It's been a good life to this point. For me, my family.
And Ashby's been fortunate to have you as a citizen all these years.
Well, not everybody would agree with you.
Well, I can say that I appreciate your...
Yeah, well, I get a tendency of getting under some people's skins, but I always go for the throat, when they can't breathe, they can't argue with you.
Well, Bob, I really appreciate it. There may be other people who have other questions, but I appreciate...
Don't make a film about this now, because they'll...
Oh, no, I won't tell anybody.
Because what happens, they'll buy it just to burn it. I always wanted to be a movie star, but I never quite made it.
It's never too late, Bob.
Yes, I noticed that now.
We're gonna...
So if I ham it up a little bit, you'll know why.
They'll come calling, I'm sure.